All right, everybody, it's Adam here. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with the Church of God restoration. There's many layers to this, so I don't have a lot of time here, but I think what we're seeing is a response from Steve Hargrave against Henry Hildebrandt. I did an article this morning about 4 o'clock and posted it, showing the difference between the two as far as their social media accounts are concerned. Henry, 17,000 followers. Steve, 130. Not 1,000, but 130. And when I was in Steve Hargrave's congregation, Steve was very much opposed to me approaching him about the way he was handling things. Steve was never easily entreated, and he absolutely disdained me coming and speaking to him. He would turn on me every time that I did try to talk to him. At length, finally, after 6 years, he turned my wife against me to the point where she went along with kicking me out on trumped up charges. And then ultimately, when I questioned them praying another way in 2019, he told my wife to leave me, and 6 months later told her to divorce me because I was waxing worse against the church. And so for the last 5 years, I have sought to expose their iniquity and to put it in very plain speech so that you guys could understand, the rest of the world could understand, the church could understand what iniquity looks like, what false shepherds, what their actions and their words do to people behind the scenes, and that are largely overlooked. And so here we are. I'm looking at this from a spiritual point of view and an educated point of view. And we know that Steve, sometime during Henry's peak of attraction, came out with his little video where he was wearing a beanie and he was talking about our dear beloved Apostle Henry. And you know him as Pastor Henry, but we know him as Apostle Henry. And I can't wait to come up to Canada. And then we saw Steve come to Canada. He was introduced by a young black sister from his congregation, introduced him, among other things, as the great Negro agitator, wherein Steve made his appearance wearing a colorful cloak, which was never done. And he pompously walks up to the pulpit and preaches to the people in Elmer. Then we see the Church of God leaders coming in, telling Henry and his congregation to sell the fruit farm, on the heels of the false apostles telling them, go for broke, lay the money at the apostles' feet. If anything, when things hit the fan, we'll have your back. We'll make sure you're fed. We'll make sure you're clothed, etc. They come along and tell Henry and gang, oh, you got to sell the fruit farm. So they sell the fruit farm. Then they tell them to sell their homes, and many of them sold their homes. And guess what? The money was taken and given to headquarters down in Greenville, Ohio, wherein Ray, who is a miserable handler of money, evidenced by him driving his dad's business in the dirt and bankrupting it, among other things. They took the money and wasted it, probably, because I'm sure Ray is broke today. I heard just this morning that he was in Canada trying to, just this week, trying to get more money out of the Almer congregation. So back to the Steve and Henry situation. I've heard that Steve got extremely upset with Henry because Henry did not support his, whatever it is, his documentary the way Ray says it, his documentary on slavery. And Henry didn't demand that his people go the 6-7 hour drive down to Muncie to support Steve, and I guess the thing was a flop. I know that Steve spent lots of money. They sent out letterheads on fancy paper with professionally done up tickets. They sent them to multiple pastors throughout the U.S., soliciting them to come. I saw copies of it. They were sent to me. I tried to get the tickets, but the one brother said he threw them away about a week ahead of time. So anyway, so Steve spent a bunch of money and the thing was a flop. They didn't get the volume of people coming in that they were expecting. I think that, again, Steve is extremely jealous of Henry. I think Ray is too. I think Henry got too big for them. They got scared, and they began probably a year or more ago to whittle away at Henry. Once they had the fruit farm sold and many of the houses sold and got Henry's 800 some visitors down to just a handful, then they moved in recently, and lo and behold, who did Steve Hargrave send to Almer to set Henry down? He sent the disgraced Elizabeth God is a Liar Opal, who made many blasphemous claims against God and God's church, saying that God told her he was going to raise up Dietrich from the dead. Never happened. She was going to send a text to the apostles, and they were going to heal him up, raise him up. God is a liar. If you get to the pearly gates and they tell you no, all you have to say is, but Brother Ray said, and they'll say, okay, come in. Elizabeth Opal is extremely offside. And here recently, about 8 months ago, she was made to sell her home here in Warsaw and moved out of this community into Stephen Hargrave's care in Muncie, Indiana. So he sends this individual to set down, quote unquote, Pastor Henry, who's been preaching up there for 30 years, thousands and thousands of followers, as opposed to Steve's 130. And then to add insult to injury, and I'm going to add here, again, I'm speaking from experience, right in the midst of Steve telling my wife to divorce me, he puts her up behind the pulpit to preach. Okay? Not only is she a female, but she's a female actively engaged in suing her husband at the court of law, and Steve puts her up behind the pulpit to preach. No question about it in my mind, it was a hit against me by Steve, thinking that he can further hurt me in some way. As if, taking my wife and family wasn't enough, you had to go the extra mile. This is the way I see Stephen Hargrave putting Jacob Braun up to being the pastor in Warsaw. In Elmer. Jacob Braun comes out with the 93 minutes against the cult and the leaders. You can go to Cult Busters on YouTube. It's right there. There's 3 videos broken down in about 30 minutes apiece. Jacob Braun, you go to cultbusters.us. They're there in Low German and in English. They set Jacob down. We're seeing everything that Jacob told us then coming to pass now. We've seen it for the last year coming to pass. And so what does Steve do? He sends Elizabeth, who has absolutely caused them much grief. Many places she's been. He sends her up there to set Henry down, and then he puts Jacob Braun as the pastor over Henry's congregation. So, you know, so then we've got, we don't know what's going to happen with Henry. We see now 13 apostles going against their long prophecy of 12 apostles and them, you know, mimicking Jesus with his 12 and all this. Now they got 13. We see Patrick O'Shea Sr. in Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. He's no longer listed as the pastor in Dublin. Some other fellow by the name of Weiss is now listed as the pastor. So is Weiss going to turn out like Paul Scott did for Ray Tinsman in Greenville when Ray decided, okay, this is getting too hot. They're exposing too much here. I'm going to have to step down. I'm going to put Paul Scott in place, who's now basically dismissed himself. He got in trouble, and I've been told some things about that I can't substantiate it, but let's just say it involved some hanky-panky, okay? And you figure it out. So Paul is no longer the chief preacher. They bring in the fellow that was over Danny Lane's congregation, who they moved to Texas, and then that congregation was dissolved, and now that preacher is the main pastor in Greenville. I mean, it's just a mess all the way around. Meanwhile, the three are running around licking their lips saying, what have I done? Like the whore in Proverbs, done all kinds of damage, but they're right and everybody else is wrong. Steve is the most extreme racist person I've ever met or heard about, but yet all of us, we're the racist ones. Why? Oh, because we're white. We're racist. But he's the one with the website, Real Black Excellence, and Hustling Backwards, the book he wrote. Only one book written by those in the cult, and it's a book about racism by a racist black man in the cult. That's all. And Brother Harlan Sorrell, I think, has written 5 or 6 books now. 5 or 6. And several of them directly speaking about the heretical acts of the Church of God Restoration. So, anyway, I'll leave you with that. I just wanted to kind of give you a synopsis of everything that's going on. It's interesting times, and we're just going to sit back and watch and see what the Lord has in store for us. He said he's going to use this to expose iniquity, and that's what he's doing. He's using this to expose iniquity. Jesus said when he comes back, he's not going to say, depart from me, ye that commit adultery, you liar, you thief, you workers of iniquity. And he also said, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And we see many, many former members who have gone into full-blown atheist, agnosticism, all kinds of things against God because of the iniquity of these leaders. So God's exposing it. He's tired of it. And it's an interesting situation, what we're seeing before our eyes. All right. Adam Paymer signing off. Lord bless you. Share the videos, share the post, and warn your friends, because with good words and fair speeches, they deceive the hearts of the simple. We got to get to them before they do. Lord bless y'all.